Residents of Fort Mill, South Carolina have raised concerns about Silfab Solar's new construction of a facility near multiple neighborhoods and schools. The recent publication of a risk assessment by University of South Carolina professor Dr. Dwayne E. Porter highlighted the worst-case scenario risk of multiple chemicals used in the solar cell production process, including silane, anhydrous ammonia, hydrochloric acid, and hydrofluoric acid. Porter's report echoes concerns voiced by members of the community who believe that the York County government inappropriately granted Silfab construction permits, and who believe that a unanimous Board of Zoning Appeals decision against the company was correct. I spoke with Silfab's Director of Operations, Greg Baston, to understand the firm's perspective on the USC report and the zoning issue. Here's our conversation.
It's both inaccurate and incomplete. Their worst case, they stated they did worst case, but their worst case is incorrect. What I mean by that, for example, for worst case for hydrochloric acid and hydrofluoric acid, what they should have done is, their worst case assumes you empty almost 52,000 pounds of hydrochloric acid, right? And they modeled that as if you ruptured the tank and you emptied it in the parking lot. That's how they modeled it. However, in reality, you're supposed to include any passive containment measures that are in place. And for us, our tanks for hydrochloric acid and hydrofluoric acid, they're sitting in a containment vessel. So in other words, if your tank ruptures and you lose all of that chemical is contained within this secondary containment vessel. And so it does not run out in the parking lot. In addition to that, it all happens in an enclosed building, right? So those are mitigations that are built into our base process, and it's passive, right? So there's no decision making. It just, the worst case scenario is not near as significant as that South Carolina article reported. So that was one issue. The second issue that makes it inaccurate, if you're reading the report, they talk about how they judge the topography. And topography plays a big part in how, if you have a release, how it disperses, in the air. They modeled it as rural. And if you go to the EPA's definition of rural, they say it's flat with no trees or obstacles, right? Well, at least in this area of Fort Mill, it's not flat. There's a lot of trees and there's a lot of buildings around. And that fits the definition of urban. So they should have modeled it as urban. If they would have done that, the dispersion would have been much less. And then the third thing, which is an inaccuracy across all their evaluation, is they failed to appreciate or include the multiple fail-safes that we have in place, that how we handle all these chemicals, which quite honestly reduces what we would call a worst case condition. In addition to that, I see it as the report is also incomplete, right? The way our report is submitted and what the EPA expects basically is they want you to model the worst case, but then they want you to model the alternative scenario. And what they mean by that is if you're going to have a release, an accidental release of a chemical, this is how it's going to happen, for lack of a better term. And they ignored that, right? They just told one part of the story, right, which is it's really, really worst case because it's inaccurate. And in my opinion, it's irresponsible to not include the alternative scenario in that report. That's what the EPA allows. I think that's what they expect, and that's what you would see in our risk management plan that we submitted and was accepted by the EPA.
There are folks who really do believe you're making a good faith effort and even going above and beyond what is legally required to make this process safe, but feel that it's just zoned in the wrong area. What would you say to folks that have that perspective?
So, I mean, I think the way to answer that is, from the very beginning, we were zoned appropriately as light industrial. It's unfortunate that, when the zoning decision was overturned, we're operational, or we were allowed to continue construction when the county came back and they gave us a letter, a legal notice that appeal decision didn't apply to us. So that allows us to continue. The county officials, they continue to approve various construction permits. DES, they've approved our air permit. They've approved our wastewater pretreatment permit. The state of South Carolina has approved a portion. They've already approved the first phase of our sprinkler system permit that we need. So in my opinion, I mean, we were initially zoned correctly, and looking at all the permits and the approvals that we're getting, that's accurate.
When do y'all anticipate beginning operations?
Very, very soon. I mean, within very short amount of time, we'll be ramping up very slowly. I mean, right now we have a little over 200 people, and we'll be ramping up quickly to about 800 over the next at least 3 months, 3-4 months. So, I mean, production is right around the corner.
And what would your firm say to folks, good intentioned people who are concerned, people who live in the area, people who have kids who go to school in the area? What's the message directly to them?
I think that the message to them would be, appreciate the facts, appreciate the technology that is built into all of our processes. And I think a key point is, the technology and the controls, it's not necessarily things that Silfab thought of or created. There's a lot of different chemicals used all over the country, that by different companies that make different products, that have the same kind of controls that we do, right? So all the mechanisms we have to protect our people and to protect the community, that they've existed for a while. I mean, I would ask people to listen to the facts, and if they got questions about specific things, find the right person to ask. I mean, actually, we'll direct them to the silfabsolarsc.com website, that has all the facts about everything that we're doing. But I mean, it's important that people with concerns, they have the right information, and they don't get overwhelmed by fear mongering, which is what's happening right now. I mean, safety is just, it's obviously the most important thing, for all of our people here. And as Lindsay said, I mean, I relocated here about a year ago, with my family, and we relocated several people, new to the area. But most of our hiring is from locals, right? And I mean, I'm a very firm believer, confidence in all of our safety measures. We keep our people safe, with all of our processes and controls, and the neighborhood and the community, they're going to get that level of safety for free, because nothing's more important than the safety of our team members.
Count on FITSNews to continue tracking the construction of the Silfab facility as this issue winds its way through the courts. I'm Dylan Nolan for FITSNews.com.